Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's edition of the Watch Club. We're the monthly filmmaker interview series of the Newburyport Documentary Film Festival. I'm Program Director James Sullivan. We're brought to you, as always, by the Ford Hall Forum, which is the longest continuously operating public lecture series in the country. We thank them, as always, and we thank you for watching and for your donations. Don't forget to subscribe and like our YouTube channel so you can get updates on our monthly interview series. We're here today with Ben Loeterman, who is the Boston-based filmmaker behind a new PBS documentary called BOMBSHELL, which is about the dropping and the development and then dropping of the atomic bomb during World War II, and also the government's efforts to suppress some of the information about the damage that the bomb caused. For the benefit of those of you who have not yet had a chance to watch the film, which is streaming on the PBS website, we'll play the trailer right now, and then we'll be right back with Ben Loeterman.
On American Experience, the government effort to frame the story of the atomic bomb.
They want people to think that nuclear bombs are okay.
There was very little written about the radiation.
And the journalists who pushed back and raised ethical concerns.
I felt staggered by what I'd seen. I write this as a warning to the world.
Bombshell on American Experience.
Please welcome to the Watch Club, Ben Loeterman. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Thanks, James.
All right, so you're in Boston and we're in Newburyport. Are you totally It's snowed in? Did you have to shovel for the last 3 days like I did?
Yes, and we're still completely snowed in, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, I was still shoveling today, trying to get the sidewalk done. Anyway, thanks for making this film. You have a long history with PBS and with documentary filmmaking that we'll get into, but let's talk specifically about Bombshell first. Simple question for starters. Tell me why. So there were some fascinating things, lots of stuff that I thought I knew, plenty of things in the film that I definitely did not know. Very informative. I really appreciated it. Very much in the old school sort of like archival documentary style, as it needs to be because it's about World War II, obviously. But simple question for starters: why tell this story now?
Maybe the real question is why tell the story?
Okay.
And the answer is that I was asked to. I had made a film, my last film, which was funded by the NEH, the National Endowment for Humanities, was about a very different kind of journalist. It was about Walter Winchell, and had a very different kind of message and involved very, very different kinds of storytelling. This film is interesting.
Sorry, Ben, let's just say for the benefit of those who don't know, right? Winchell was like sort of the preeminent gossip columnist and then sort of political nudge, for lack of a better word, right? Around that time, like sort of 40s, 50s, right?
That's right. And yet took himself as a serious journalist. Mm-hmm. He was the first and the loudest to go after Hitler in this country. And he was a great friend of Roosevelt. And then when Roosevelt died, he felt like he'd kind of lost his North Star and was lost for a while until he thought someone new he was introduced to called Senator Joe McCarthy was going to be the next Roosevelt. Right. And he kind of hitched himself to McCarthy, and that didn't turn out well.
So sorry, continue. You made the Winchell film.
So the Winchell film had a lot of social history in it.
Yeah.
And it turned out that the National Endowment really liked the film. They were very taken with it. And, you make these things and you're not sure if someone's going to like it or not, or if the people who make it possible for you to make it are going to like it or not. And you take your chances. And so I got a call one day, and my program officer from the NEH said, "What are you working on now?" I said, "Absolutely nothing." He said, "No, come on, really, what are you doing?" I said, "Honest to God, I'm sitting on the couch. I'm reading a new biography because there's a new biography for the first time about someone who was my idol in the 10th grade, and that was John Hersey.
Yeah. Okay.
And he said, sounds interesting. Why don't you look into him? So I thought at first I was making a film about John Hersey. And as anyone who's seen the film knows, that's not how it ended up. And John Hersey plays a very important part in the film, but he's not the film. And that's how this got made.
That's one of the things that I think I was surprised by. I know the Hersey story, which for those of you who have seen Ben's film, you know it too now, but Hersey's the guy who went to Hiroshima not long after the bomb dropped, did the major reporting for the New Yorker, which actually we covered last month with our interview with the guy who made the New Yorker film. But you know, they devoted an entire issue to Hersey's long form reporting. And, you know, your film shows how there were several reporters who beat him to Hiroshima. It's just that he was the one who got sort of captured America's attention with the storytelling. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So how much did you grow up in the sort of like duck and cover era, you know, like the atomic age? Because there's some the sort of the pop culture effects of the, you know, that stuff, you know, somehow trying to make like the threat of nuclear annihilation fun with cartoons and things, you know, like, oh, don't forget, you know, dive on the desk if you have to, you know.
I may have been at the very tail end of that, because by the time I was in college, I was firmly in the Woodward and Bernstein camp of investigative journalism. But sure, when I was a kid in elementary school, we did those drills. So it's not completely foreign to me.
There's that fun classic documentary that's kind of a montage called The Atomic Cafe. Some of your stuff is probably in that, right?
The very beginning stuff about the culture is from Atomic Cafe.
Right.
Absolutely right.
Exactly. But it's a minor part of your film. It just happens to be sort of the first part.
Right.
So you did some serious deep diving into the archives. You know, there's all kinds of great film clips, black and white film clips, obviously, you know, stuff of Truman and, you know, the different reporters and the atomic blast tests and fallout from, well, you know, personal fallout. You know, fallout is an odd word to pick, but yeah. You know, what can you tell us about how you go about, you as a filmmaker go about finding the right people who can help you identify that stuff?
Sure. I just want to say stylistically, what I try to do is let the film tell me how to make it.
Right.
And so I started a long time ago in current affairs films. I worked for a series called Frontline for a long time. And I've worked with foreign directors who are much less hesitant than many American directors are to use things like recreations, to use things like graphics montages, to take what we would think are a lot of stylistic chances. And I've always tried to make films that will be judged on that basis as well as their content. But this film posed a special and kind of unique problem for us, which was that we had better get this straight and tell it without a lot of artifice. Otherwise, we had our own credibility at stake in a film that was all about journalistic credibility. So that's how we did that. I started reading that biography of John Hersey and looking into the story right around 2020, which was, as it happened, the 75th anniversary of the bombings. So that was going to be a big anniversary. There were a lot of commemorations, but also conferences planned in Japan, in Hiroshima.
I remember a lot of talk about, you know, the last remaining Japanese survivors.
That's right. And what was happening 5 years ago was the last of the first generation of American historians and scholars, the people who write the books that became the film Oppenheimer. They are in their 90s, or they are no longer with us.
Right.
And this was a chance on the 75th anniversary for what we call the Young Turks,
Right.
you know, the next generation of nuclear historians, to go back into the archives, to do their own deep dive, to do their own reassessment of the material, and be ready for all these conferences in Japan. COVID came, all the conferences were canceled. All these guys had, and women had their new papers, their new work, their new thoughts ready to go and nowhere to tell it. And that's when I started bumping into them, and they became the basis of the film.
Oh, wow. Okay. So do you have ongoing conversations with the folks at PBS when you know you're making another film for them about what you just talked about, the stylistic stuff? You know, like, do they just say, Ben, okay, we've agreed to have you go make this film for us. We want this film on Hiroshima bombing. Come back to us when you're done. Or do they say, we need to help you set parameters for yourself for the reasons that you just said, like, you know, making sure that it's a straight shooter type film because it's about journalistic integrity.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. And the answer is never.
Really?
I never have those conversations. Never have, never would, never will.
Well, you'd prefer not to, but I'm wondering if they kind of insist on it. And it sounds like the answer is no, right? They don't insist on having
the answer is no. And in a way, they're, broadcast executives' knowledge of the craft of filmmaking is not necessarily that deep. So if I am making a film about a story that takes place in a time when silent movies were being made, and silent movies were being made at 18 frames a second. Now we see films made at 24 frames a second. So that's why people walking in them always look a little funny or a little quick or something. And then we would shoot new material at that antique rate of 18 frames a second to make that material match. Broadcast executives aren't so savvy about all that kind of stuff. So I once made a film and forgot on purpose to ask them or tell them that it was going to be in black and white, shot on Super 8 film, and they were surprised, but it worked very well for that film.
Yeah.
And so if it does, I generally find people are willing to go with you and swallow these very different styles. But it seemed like for this one, we wanted to be very careful and put a very credible stamp on it.
And you also have a long track record with them in particular, right? I mean, you've been doing work for PBS for 40 years or since the 80s, right?
Give or take, yeah.
It's not like you're a spring chicken.
Don't tell anyone,
though. One thing that was really fascinating to me that I don't think I've ever read before, and I don't know if this is fairly common knowledge to, more hardcore World War II buffs than me or not, the fact that Truman didn't know anything about the atomic bomb development, the Manhattan Project, the development program, until FDR died and Truman became Truman's vice president, and he didn't know about the program. That's how secretive it was, right?
That's right.
Is that fairly common knowledge among big-time World War II buffs, or not necessarily?
Well, it's interesting because there are World War II buffs, there are war buffs, there are bomb buffs, there are people who are very ensconced in the material, very deep in the material. They can be amateur historians. They know a tremendous amount, but we were kind of going at a different angle that had been done before. We were trying not to re-argue or not relitigate anything about the decision to use the bomb. we were very interested in the act of storytelling and how, in fact, you go from something so secret to something that is going to have to be very public,
Yeah.
and also go very public in a certain way to gain the hearts and minds and enthusiasm of an American audience in this case.
And what we find out about that rollout of the story, i.e., the radiation's not going to linger that long. It's not, yes, some people died, but the bottom line is that a lot more people would have died had the war dragged out in normal combat much longer, covering up the, real devastation of the radiation effects. Surprise, the government, the American government, like every other government, wants to, shape the story in the way that works for them.
Right.
And then sadly, obviously, as your film shows, my profession of journalism doesn't exactly come off scot-free in terms of its cooperation with the government to tell the story the government wanted to be told.
Right. And so that's worth talking about. And it's worth talking about whether we're applying today's journalistic and ethical standards to back then, or what was happening back then, or what was kosher and what was not kosher. And there's a lot of room for discussion in that.
Steve's running the crawl at the bottom. This is a good opportunity for me to say, those of you who are watching this taping live, if you do have a question for filmmaker Ben Loeterman, please just type it in the chat and we will ask him. But to go back to what you were just saying about journalistic standards, I always think about how, it's off topic, but not in terms of journalism. In Babe Ruth's day, the journalists palled around with him on the trains between cities, on the journalists that were covering the Yankees.
Right.
And you didn't really know, nobody really knew what a, drunk and boorish person he was until years later, because the journalists felt like, well, it's not our place to tattle on him, basically,
Right. Right.
And that, 50 years later, sports writing changed entirely by the 70s or whatever. And today, if there's a, misbehaving star athlete who's the biggest name in the sport, we would know about it. Somebody was reporting on it. It's just, it was a different era, right?
It was a different era, but I think even then there are different categories of this we talk about, and Babe Ruth is one. But when you have the head of the Manhattan Project go into enemy territory, meaning Manhattan in New York City, to pluck from the New York Times their number one star science reporter and say to the Times, what kind of patriots are you? I need to borrow your guy for a few months.
Right.
And ultimately have him write the press releases with varying degrees of truth.
Truthiness,
Depending on what happened and what scenarios came forth, to do that. So that's an interesting question.
Yeah. You told me before we started taping that you are you from Los Angeles in the first place, or?
I am originally, yeah.
Yeah. And then made your way here to Boston at the outset of your career. You want to retell that, or tell the folks that story? Like, so you were born and raised in LA and then got to Boston how?
Well, I was born and raised in LA. My family's from LA. My father went to UCLA. My brother went to UCLA. And I went to UCLA. And when I did, it was the beginning and burgeoning moment of universities, and particularly communication schools, happening and offering things like communications majors. And so I enrolled at the one at UCLA, of course, and thought that I could cobble together some filmmaking classes, maybe some broadcast journalism classes, maybe some news writing classes and tried to pursue this interest I had of nonfiction films that I was looking at. I took a couple documentary appreciation courses and would be on my way. I had a terrific advisor there who kind of set me straight and said, "No, young man, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time to do that." And that was Los Angeles in the 1970s. There were not documentary films being made there. There were not documentary filmmakers there. And so if one was going to pursue that in any serious way, one ultimately had to go somewhere else, which sounds so funny to people because they say, wait a second, you're from the filmmaking capital, aren't you?
Yeah, but they were, I mean, especially in the 70s with the auteur, era, right? Like everybody just wanted to be making Chinatown or whatever. Like
it's not happening.
Right.
So I came to Boston. I started working on nonfiction films through the public television station here, and met more directors from around the world than I had even studied in UCLA, and began making those kinds of films. And the series I was working on then became Frontline, and that kept me very happy for a lot of years.
In those documentary appreciation courses, what were some of that? What were a couple of the classics that really struck you as like, oh, that's what I want to devote my career to?
There was a film called Waiting for Fidel, where the filmmakers traveled to Cuba. They traveled to Havana. Their goal was to get an interview with Fidel Castro. They were put up in a great house on the edge of town, had no chance of ever meeting Fidel Castro. And so the director and the producer had the cameraman basically turn the camera on them as they argued about why they went, what they were going for, and what they did.
I am writing that down. I can't believe I have not heard of that. That's great.
Waiting for Fidel is a wonderful film. There were films even about the atomic bomb experience, and I'm going to blank on the name of one of them now. Famous British director. And
it'll come to you,
these employed like big recreations, and nuclear effects and that kind of thing. So just a whole host of different things that I was exposed to.
I want to ask you about another film that you made, I think 10 or 12 years ago, right? 1913, Seeds of Conflict, right? You still have the website up for it. Oh, Steve grabbed the website screenshot for it. Ben, you have your own filmmaker website, but then you still have a website up for this film itself, right? Which you made for PBS, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So Seeds, I just watched it after I watched Bombshell to get ready to talk to you, and it was really, really informative. And I'm wondering if it's about. Well, explain what it's about.
The film is about that moment in a very far away outback part of the Ottoman Empire at that point called Palestine, which couldn't seem further from the middle of Turkey than you could imagine. And it was the moment when there began to be a rise in nationalism, first of all, sweeping the world, but also sweeping that part of the empire, when Jews began to think in more nationalist terms of creating a homeland for themselves. And there were stirrings of Arab nationalism too. And so we use that moment of 1913 and center in on a single town where the first recorded killings of 2 Jews and 2 Arabs took place right on the cusp of World War I, which took place between 1913 and 1917. And then after that, everything changed. So I wanted to go back and I just wanted to see what are the roots of the struggles today. Where did it didn't come from the Bible, I didn't think. And so I wanted to see where it did come from. And it turns out to be about 100 years old.
Yeah. And I mean, I think people generally think that, Arabs and Jews have been fighting for millennia or whatever.
Right.
But your film shows clearly that Arabs, Jews, and Christians were coexisting pretty much peacefully prior to the incident that you're talking, or the build up to the incident that you're talking about.
Right. That's right. And that was fascinating to me. And I have reasons to be interested in that place today. I made films in the Arab world. I have a daughter who lives in Israel. And so I'm fascinated in those dreams of coexistence and when those dreams were ever realized, if they were.
Yeah.
And it turns out they were then.
Are you finding a renewed interest in that film?
Tremendously. It's my most popular film. It's my most popular film right now. So God forbid that Bombshell should become popular. We will know something bad is really happening.
Oh God. Oh, that's not funny. Why am I laughing?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be a good place to end on, because if Bombshell becomes popular, you know, we might be ending on something. Real pleasure to talk to you. I couldn't recommend both of them more if you're interested in, you know, what's going on in Gaza. Ben's film, 1913, Seeds of Conflict, is incredibly informative. And again, like I said earlier, Bombshell taught me a lot of things that I didn't already know about that period in our history. So thanks for doing what you do. And
it's been fun because Bombshell has also told people who know a lot about that moment and that history and the decision to drop the bombs and what were they dropped for, that don't know this part of the history. So it's always fun to kind of scrape away at a new corner of it and learn with everyone else that there are parts of the story we didn't know.
Right. Exactly. Well, thanks again, Ben. Great to talk to you. Hope to talk to you again sometime soon. And we will just take a moment to thank our sponsor again, the $4 Forum. And we will see you all next month on the Watch Club. Thanks again.